synergies between groups? Because each one of you are heading a different aspect altogether. Sovereign interacting with talent would be very different. So maybe any one of you want to get started. Could I invite Mastura maybe? Yep.
Thank you, Daman. I think in the case of talent group, I think when we first met, the first thing the core team did, which is between the chairman, deputy chairman, and secretary, we roll out the terms of reference. And this is where we share a framework so that everyone would understand what is it they need to deliver. And what we did was differently is that we split the team into the 6 sectors that NAIO wants us to work on, which is agriculture, healthcare, MSME, education, transportation, and public sector. Of course, some of us have no clue on what is agriculture or what is transportation, but guys, we are in the world of AI. I mean, there's a lot of things that AI can help us do, and this is what we notice here. When there is a lead, when there's a leader, and when you know what needs to be done, everyone will pull their weight, and everyone wants to contribute, and this is what we notice. And there's a lot of information that we have gotten in the last 6 weeks here, and we are now rushing for the second deliverables. In our case, it's next week, and they have to submit the report by 22nd April, and my team is actually working very, very hard.
Okay, so specifically maybe between safety and security. We know there's quite a bit of synergy in these areas, AI safety and security. Mel, Calvin, how did you find interactions between working groups?
I think the synergy is very, very positive. There's a lot of alignment, not just alignment in terms of overlap. There are overlaps, definitely, not just between security and safety, but with the other working groups as well. And the way that we resolve this is through having a clear understanding of the scope and the objective of each working group, right? Communicating, I have called with Calvin, and we share ideas. We share what we do, what we think. There's a lot of, I think among the working groups, there's a lot of openness in terms of acceptance of what each other is doing, and realizing that there's always overlap, right? But the main thing is really focusing on the objective, right? For security, for example, we have very, very clear objective of what AI security is for the country, for businesses, and also for the rakyat. And that sets the parameters of our deliverables moving forward. So, and we communicate that clearly to the other working groups so that, we know where we need to align and ensure that we're not doing double work. Yeah.
I think Mel summed up really, really beautifully. And I think one of the aspects in AI safety and AI security is that I think there are obviously overlaps, but then that overlap also, we saw an opportunity to triangulate and also to validate some of the hypotheses that we have initially between some of the scope between AI safety and also AI security. And I think one thing, establishing the objectives, establishing the scope is really important. But then I think one of the value of the synergy that we saw was the validation of the data that we have from different points of contact, because we have 2 separate groups of people discussing 2 separate issues, but then you will find tracks where it will actually cross. And I think that intersection is where we find a lot of value, where we are able to then validate and also add on another layer of rigor into our analysis and deliverable at the end of the day.
Okay, so I think we've got a picture of how the groups are working, right? To an extent that you've balanced and you've aligned out between different members and different perspectives. So maybe I could dive in a bit into advisory, Adrian. Yeah. Now, to contextualize, advisory is possibly the most diverse group, just by its nature, very diverse from backgrounds. Also the approach that you're taking and your deliverable. So maybe, Adrian, you could take us a little bit through the advisory's deliverable and explain a little bit how the deliverable aligns in terms of risks, values, and how it contributes to the adoption rate or the intended adoption rate in Malaysia.
Okay, thanks for the question, Damin. Although I think there are 3 questions in one,
Yes.
right? Okay, we start with the diversity of the group, right? So indeed, advisory working group is quite diverse. We have legal professionals, we have industry practitioners, we have consultants, academia, so very, very diverse group. And to be honest, for the first 2 or 3 weeks, we kind of got lost a bit because of the diversity that we had. What is it that we are supposed to focus on? Notwithstanding the fact that there are 7 other groups in here. So if we focus too much on security, there's someone else doing it, right? Or safety or talent and so on and so forth. So what does advisory do, right? And for 2 or 3 weeks, we kind of asked our questions like, okay, what do we do? And then, of course, NAIO has tried to promise a bit, gave us some questions to solve, and it was also very hard to include everyone because the questions were either too, I'll call it high-level, macro, strategic, which the members may not necessarily have the skills, or not all members have, or they were very deep technical questions that, again, not all members may have the skills. So then I guess after a few meetings, we came up with this idea of, thanks to NAIO as well, the feedback of coming up with a playbook, right? And the playbook is really an adoption playbook targeted at board of directors and business owners. So we thought that's a good idea actually, because that kind of draws the diversity of the group where everybody can contribute, right? If you think about a playbook, there are many elements of playbook. You touch on a couple of them. One is value of AI, which is a lot of questions as we go around to different organizations. That is the first question that's on people's mind. How do I even determine value when I want to do AI? Is it just the financial value? What about the socio-economic value? What about the employee value propositions? Things like that. So that has to go into the playbook, right? Balancing that against risk, right? And when we think about risk, it's about the risk of AI going wrong. It's about the risk of not even attempting to adopt the AI, and also readiness, right? In terms of readiness, in terms of their data, the talent they have, and all that. So there's a lot of things that organizations need to think about when they want to embark on AI. And having a playbook, I truly believe, will help with driving the adoption, or at least improving the AI literacy of organizations.
Now, taking this to slightly more macro level, Edwin, from the policy side. So, again, for context, regulation and policy are put together. I believe you're the largest working group, right?
70 of us, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, and internally you've managed to align and split yourselves and manage between policy and regulation. So we'll take policy. From what Adrian was just describing in terms of adoption rates, how do we see the developments, the policy side of things, assisting with the adoption rate?
Yeah, thanks, Damin. Well, what you say is correct. We are, I think, the largest group, right, in with regulation and policy. That's the reason why we decided to split the group into policy and regulation. Having said that, the team itself, regulation and policy, is really so broad. Yes, and it's also a fair amount of overlapping with governance, ethics, and advisory. In fact, most of the 7 groups, right, there's quite a fair amount of overlapping as well. Going forward, I like what the advisory group is saying about the playbook and generating more adoption. So from the policy level, as you mentioned, we are looking at a more macro perspective. So we set out from the beginning to look at it at, for example, at an ecosystem, at a country level. What is, for example, Malaysia's comparative advantage? What are for example, literacy? What are the government initiatives that we have at a national level first? Then we filter down to the economic impact of AI, and then the social economic impact, right? Obviously, it's positive and negative impact. Yes, so we're looking at it at more of a macro level, and then we pass it on to the regulation side, which is partner in crime, Professor Narashikin here, where they would then recommend the the regulatory frameworks, not exactly going to a bill or laws yet, but more of a guidelines and framework to perhaps say regulate the negative impacts, or at least to dampen the negative impacts of AI going forward, yeah, while we are trying to increase the adoption. Yeah.
Okay, so of course, naturally, Professor Ashkin, I think I need to come to the regulatory side. So if policy and regulatory are informing one another, how are we seeing the development of regulatory frameworks, which is within the purview of your group? Any interesting insights that are coming out thus far?
Okay. Thank you. It's a tough question to answer. I also like to add a little bit of the problem that we had being the largest group. The first thing that we had after our first meeting, we had a really basic foundational problem. What is actually the difference between policy and regulation? Which one comes first, the policy or the regulation? The chicken or egg or chicken? And then if we deliberate on that for long, then we might not be able to move on. So these are actually the issue. And then being the largest, so there's a lot of inputs. Everybody positively. Everybody wants to contribute. Everybody has so much knowledge. Everybody loves this country, and they want to see their input there. But how do we again regulate the member? Because we have an influx of information, influx of documents that we need to really filter. So, but once we get, I think I must thank Dr. Bama and also NAIO for asking us to come up with the 5 questions. So when we design the 5 questions, only then we can see clearly the differences between policy and regulation, because policy is more towards the strategic direction of the country. What would be the goal of the country? How actually AI would benefit Malaysia? So from there on, the way, their perspective and outlook they're looking for, and then how AI should be developed in Malaysia is different than regulation, because regulation is that how can we make sure that the AI that we're going to use is going to protect the country in terms of security, in terms of safety, and in terms of the risk, the people. So when we try to contact, and then it's so important because when we have to bear in mind all the time that the law or the policy that we're going to develop should be contextualized to the Malaysian requirements and needs. We cannot simply copy and paste. A lot of documents out there, easy for us to copy, and we can get it done within 3 weeks. But we try to control ourselves, know that those are actually the documents for those countries. They are actually solving their problem. Malaysia might have a different problem, different needs, because we are actually still a technology user country. How are we going to move towards that direction of technology producer? Because their provisions or maybe their requirements is slightly different. So we have to contextualize. So a lot of discussion from now on, or from at this stage, I think it's safe for me to say that okay, we have some framework, few things that really came up. We believe that a hybrid approach would be more appropriate for Malaysia. We are going to use the vertical and also the horizontal. These technical teams have been flying around. In the team, sometimes people say that what is vertical and what is horizontal. I said, never mind, by the end of these 3 months, you would know what is vertical and what is horizontal. So we're going to use that actually hybrid approach because Malaysia is very unique, because we have the federal constitution, and we also have the Rukun Negara. Then we have to make sure that we are aligned with even though Rukun Negara is not actually a law document, hard law, but it is actually a soft law that we've been practicing, we've been adopting. And also now with the Bandari values, we have to integrate the Bandari values. So I think the first thing that a lot of things that we're going to mention about security and safety and risk, and also for the rakyat, because I think what people in KL knows and people out of KL or in the rural areas need or requirements for AI will be very different. So these are the things that we're going to look at, the high risk and the low risk. But because we don't know yet, because we are still collecting data. So, but the what we call this, the
information
framework, yes, some items we already know.
Yes. So building on that, Jason, your group faced with a very difficult task as well. You're looking at governance and ethics, which I believe ties in a bit to what Professor was just talking about. So maybe you just want to run us through how the group has progressed in the scope that it's looking at.
Sure. I guess just to start, when I hear everybody and listen to some of the people we met, everyone seemed to have a smooth journey. But I think our group, our journey wasn't smooth. Probably 70, 80% of the time, I think we've been spending really trying to understand what exactly we're supposed to answer. And that question was difficult, especially with all the different overlapping areas. I see everybody smile because maybe they've been giving the PR speak, right? but on our side, it's really struggling. Thankfully, I guess, with yourself, Dr. Bama, so forth, I think we've reached a sort of a landing point, understanding, I think, the position of what we are supposed to do. And really, if you think about it, it's almost like there's a lot of things AI can do, but what it should or shouldn't do, and really ethical considerations around that, considering humans, of course, but also considering, I think, Malaysia and Malaysia values, as we talked about. And I think one of the things, of course, we had a very, we had strong discussions about what's really different about Malaysian values. Everybody likes to think they're more special than other people, right? But other countries also have special things. So really trying to distill that down, trying to see, of course, what other countries have already done, but also maybe what else we should do or shouldn't do, learning from some of these other countries. So we still have quite a bit of way to work. In fact, got a few texts before this that some of our sub-teams need more time, and we expect to be using a bit of the weekend to tie things up.
Fair enough. Nice way to inform us along the way. Now, Chiman, we're not going to ask what Sovereign's doing, because I think we're going to take this in a slightly different tangent of a technical nature. So Sovereign AI, because we've pointed out that Malaysia is unique and is not unique at the same time. It interacts with other countries. Other countries have their own agendas. Sovereign AI looks at an aspect of that. Now, taking on Sovereign AI and also for safety, for security as well, we are seeing emerging risks and shifts. Right? Diffusion rule is just one of them. Now, as these shifts happen, how are you seeing these shifts across the world impact the research and the work that you're doing currently in the working groups and the output that you're having?
Thanks for the question. It's interesting, and in fact, it ties staunchly into the experience that we have. When we first started, it took us a couple of days to find how to define sovereignty within the objective that we have, right? So we defined it in such a way that we want to make sure that Malaysia get to choose on important stuff, especially national security and the availability of AI services. As with most platform shifts, we start off with close to zero usage, and we catch on to like 80 or 90% usages in the next 3 or 4 years, right? So which means like when our government departments are using AI in the next 3 years, and 80% of their work are using AI, the availability of those AI services become a sovereign question. If we go to a certain level of disagreement with certain AI superpowers, and if they pull the services, we might not have those services. So the availability is a big one. And secondly is that data sovereignty obviously is one of the bigger ones as well. As we were defining all this stuff, things doesn't stay static. Obviously, Trump came into power and the whole tariff problem, and they keep fighting with China, and it just gives you a lot more. The reality just come a lot faster than we thought, and with that, it in fact shows a clearer picture of what we originally intended to do, which is to come up with a matrices of important sectors and its use cases and its level of risk, and recommend based on that how to be, what should be sovereign and what should not be, what doesn't need to be sovereign, And with the background of this geopolitics, it makes that part of it a lot more important. And I think going forward, the matrix will be rejiggled every time there will be a big geopolitical event such as the tariff ripoff that Trump did.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point that you brought up. I think for AI safety, the conversation in the Western world is very different compared to the ones here. And I think when we first kick-started the working group, the discussion was, what does AI safety really mean for Malaysia? I think that's the question that we want to answer. And what's the context that we are, and the parameter that we are building this premise upon, right? And I think for AI safety in the UK or in the Western world, for example, they discuss a lot about CBRE risk. For example, like AI risk in like chemical warfare, in bioterrorism, in like AI-generated nuclear codes, etc. But then for this part of the world, a lot of the conversation centers around, for example, like AI-generated pornography, AI-generated malicious content, AI-generated scams, deepfakes as well. And it's a conversation at the regional context as well. So we attempted to answer and kind of set the parameter for that. And how the conversation evolved is looking into what's the role of, do we need a dedicated institution to look into addressing risk emerging from AI. So I think the very recent meeting, we should sort of landed on something that, if we were to look into a dedicated institution, the role of the institution should actually play a dual role. One, in solving the existing problems, for example, in AI-generated scams, AI-generated malicious contents, deepfake. But then the second role is to future-proof future-proof Malaysia against the emerging risk from AI, for example, the CBRE risk that we are looking at. So there's that duality in that role. But in the context of Southeast Asia, I think that's where Malaysia is uniquely positioned to be able to lead in that conversation, because we have the AI infrastructure, we have all the right building blocks together, and the matter is putting all the building blocks together at one go and lead that conversation in the region. Many may think that that Singapore is leading in many fronts, and that's true. But then I think the opportunity in ASEAN is for Malaysia to be the bridge between the other ASEAN member states to Singapore, where Malaysia can be a unique middle power in one, capacity build the other countries in their AI development journey. Two, in being that quote-unquote bridge to reach to that level where Singapore is right now. Because I think in the regional conversation, Singapore is that is your far ahead, and many of them find it challenging to catch up, and for many of them they just tend to say we just can't be at where Singapore is today. But then Malaysia, we are not too far behind from Singapore, but then we are sort of in the middle with the other countries. So I think that's where Malaysia can be the friend to the other neighbors of ours in capacity building the other countries, but in the same time drawing successes from our national example and share it across the board as well. I think to share with you some examples, Brunei is actually looking at our national AI roadmap as an example, and also to model it after their national AI strategy and plans. Countries like Vietnam and also the Philippines and Indonesia are also looking at Malaysia as a model. And I think that's where Malaysia can play that role in working with the other ASEAN member states and look at the kind of bigger and broader neighborhood in ASEAN.
So one of the things that you pointed out, Calvin, was the capacity building aspect of it, which ties in, Mastura, to the question of talent, which is both an immediate pressing problem and a cross-cutting sectoral issue with very long-term implications. How is the talent working group looking at solving this problem or recommending?
For each of the sector, we actually look at from the four perspective of the academia, the government, the industry, and also the training providers. Yeah, and this is what we realized that in our universities, from the research we've seen, is only one have got a faculty on AI. The rest, I mean, is probably in the ICT. And then when we look at sector specific, there's none. There's no like healthcare or AI in healthcare or AI in transportation even. Yeah. So, and this is where we were looking at. Because today I've been in industry before. There's a lot of collaboration between industry and academia. It's been going on for a long, long time. But why is it still an issue today? So probably the representative from industry or even from the government bodies, MOH and whatnot, need to find the right person, you know, to sit in those committees, in those committees in the academia, or the academia themselves need to go back into industry. So we're talking about the cross fertilization, like the faculty doing work at the hospital, for example, right? So at least they understand the clinical impact of the technical aspect of AI, for example, yeah. So this been going around and around, and when you look at it, even for the education, I mean, we have a lot of rep in there, and they were talking about even since early 2000, there are people that's been sponsored by the government to learn about AI, but once they come back, they are not being placed in the relevant positions, and we were trying to find for at least the last 5 years where are these people, so that we can understand what needs to be done in the future when the government do sponsor, yeah? Government servants into doing PhD and whatnot. Yeah, so there's many fundamental issues that is going on, and what we notice also, there's a lot of body and agencies that are doing funding and doing a lot of things, and somehow or other the general public doesn't know where to go and what's going on. And this is what we hope to do in our work for each of the sector. We're going to collate all this information so that this cross collaboration among agencies or even industry can work out. So that's what we hope to propose in the next phase of our work. So that at least there's a lot of work, but at least this work then get recognized, and then people know what needs to be done next.
Okay, taking from a high-level strategy aspect, at the end of the day, the work that is being produced by the working groups in terms of recommendations could come out and become theoretical. But instead, what we all have said from the beginning, and I think was echoed in Mr. Sam's speech just now, was that we want to see it translated to real-world impact. Right? That's one aspect of it. And to get there, the public needs to trust in this aspect of AI. So maybe, Jason, if you'd like to take this, how do you see the work of the working groups across all these different areas translating into public trust so that adoption rates increase?
I think one first step before we get there, and you probably heard a moment ago, there's so many overlapping areas of what we do, right? And so the next phase probably, if we think about it, has something to do with really a bit of consolidating what we have and probably re-strategizing some of what are those key areas we need to go into. And one thought that came across some of our minds, if you think about it, I think we're having a lot of effort at work group levels, and potentially some of the resources, I think, probably should be escalated one level above there to really more directing specific targets. I think that will really help in terms of moving the next phase to something more tangible and valuable to people, where they need. So I think if you think about it, right, coming back to then your question, trust is a really difficult thing. And if we are already working, let's say, from a situation of not having or no initial credibility, how do we build that? I think it requires a long-term sort of almost like an awareness, operationalization, educational process, and that's a long-term thing. And as people take off and we have good quick wins, quick wins that we are able to demonstrate good value, pilot programs, and so forth, I think that's going to help us increase that take-up and adoption. So if you think about it, it's almost like we've almost got to treat it like, incubating certain AI projects, AI successes, and so forth with some of the stuff that we do and showing that as success stories, and success then builds upon success. So that's probably one of the ways to look at it in the next phases.
So On that, maybe I'll open this up to any member who can share, because it's really cutting across. If we were to look at trust as an aspect by perception, there's a recent report that's come out that suggests that the perception of AI in Malaysia has been stagnant for a couple of years, not increasing, not decreasing. And while the veracity of that report has got to be tested, how are we seeing use cases? Right, use cases being actually implemented in Malaysia. So in the research that all these different works, these groups have been doing, are we seeing any interesting use cases that are having real world impact in Malaysia? And maybe you could share some of those with us. Anyone?
Okay. In our healthcare report, we have seen the use cases in the diagnostic, on radiology. And I think there's a lot of work that's been done by MOH in many of the hospitals, even in the rural areas. And they are real cases. And I think it's just not a lot of sharing with others. I think we saw it when in our healthcare sector were doing some work. And there's actually a lot of work, and I didn't realize that it's actually happening. So they need to start showcasing all this. Yeah, because the public is actually benefiting from it. In the queuing system, in one of the pusat kesihatan and whatnot, they're actually using the queuing system already. Yeah, so there are real life cases. I think you need to start talking about it.
There's this little digital bank that will be launched soon. It will be one of the, I wonder which one. It will be one of the first, it will be the first text to action LLM-based app that is consumer facing in the world. There's one of the examples that is being used. But beyond that, there are actually a lot of examples of how AI is being used at the back office as well, in banks and in other regulatory heavy organization. Things are being, their AI is being used to review policies and help to draft not just policies, but including communications, including copywriting. So AI is actually being used in a lot of these departments in this day and age. And I agree, how to gain trust essentially is, a lot of people do not trust simply because they don't understand. So I think it is on us. Working in this kind of working group is a great learning experience, and when you learn it, it's good to communicate out as well, so that other people will start understanding as well and be able to trust in general.
Mel?
Yes.
Adrian? Yes, go ahead.
So just two thoughts from me. When we think about trust in AI, I think it's down to value and confidence, right? Do they see value in the AI, and do we have confidence that the AI will deliver? As part of the playbook that we are developing in the working group, that's what we seek to address in terms of the value, as well as to give a fair representation of what are some of the limitations, challenges, and risks, so that people who embark on AI go in with their eyes open. The second part to the thought that I have is that other than the playbook, we have what we call a handbook. So the handbook has collections of use cases across different sectors, right? And the reason why we have this handbook is because, as we discussed earlier, the group is quite diverse. Quite a lot of the members are from the industry, are from technology companies and all that. So there are a lot of thoughts around use cases in the handbook across 6 sectors, I believe. That's how we have divided them.
I would like just to add on from the security lens of trust. But before that, I just want to make a comment on your comment earlier, because you said that the output of the working group may be theoretical. I disagree, because at least for I'm speaking on behalf of my working group, I think we really want to give practical recommendations, right? Around security policies, security guidelines, and so on and so forth. But I think when it comes to trust, I agree with the fellow chairs that there's a lot of not understanding what AI is, right? And that is true not just for the rakyat, even the SMEs. Even I give you an example: legal and law enforcement officers, right? Let's think about it. So let's talk about the risk, right? We talk about deepfakes, we talk about AI-generated content, we talk about misinformation, disinformation, we talk about, pornography that is created using AI. Now, if you are a victim, if the rakyat is a victim, right? How do you deal with this, right? So number one, the rakyat is not aware of their rights, right? Under the law, we already have laws in Malaysia that protects the rakyat from this kind of incidents, right? You talk about the penal code, you talk about the PDPA, you talk about various other laws that we have, online safety and stuff like that. On the other hand, there's also lack of awareness by lawyers, right? Sorry, maybe some lawyers disagree with me. And I think this group of people, our legal and law enforcement officers, needs to be educated and upskilled in understanding how our existing laws and regulations can be used in the context of AI-generated, pornography, deepfakes, and so on and so forth, right? So it's not just awareness to the rakyat on their rights under the law, but also ensuring that the legal professions, the police, and so on and so forth, also understands that, hey, our existing laws can protect the rakyat. And I give you an example. In the US, right, they use a 200-year-old law to prosecute cyber criminals. They did not invent new laws or new regulations. It's like a 200-year-old law, right? So this is the thing that I think as a nation, right, we need to take stock of what we have because we have a lot of existing resources, right? The other thing that I want to highlight to everyone in the room here is that the importance of supporting the SMEs, right? We need to enable the SMEs to use, adopt, embrace AI. We need to help the SMEs to be secure when they use AI in their businesses because they are the bedrock of our economy, right? We need to have something along, maybe cyber essentials, right, or cyber certifications, very basic hygiene, right, so that they are more confident, they can innovate, they can adopt AI, with confidence and with the trust and security.
The suggestion is that there is regulation, and clearly the regulatory group, this would be something that you would have looked at and considered the extent and the breadth of regulations and laws that there are currently. Is this something that you want to address and say, share the same mind that there are laws that are sufficient here, or maybe gaps?
We have looked at, yes, there are many laws, I think hundreds of laws, and then there are many categories of laws. So the issue is that the main issue, I think, as a lawyer or a legal person, that we need to think about this AI offense. How do we categorize this AI offense? Is it I know it's a legal offense, but is it a civil law offense? Is it a criminal law offense? Or is it a commercial law offense? Once we have categorized that one, we are clear about that one, only then we can pick and choose, or we can decide which law is actually applicable. So yet, because it's not prudent to say that because you suffer, because maybe let's say you suffer some losses becomes a criminal. You think that you might think that this is a criminal law, so you think that automatically the penal code will be applicable. Actually, it's not, because it's not defined. We need some real definition, legal definition. What is actually the AI offense? So we have to know, because we are not, because AI is actually all the previous law are actually enacted and meant for human. Law AI is not. So how do we define this? Who is actually responsible? Is it the developer? Is it the person who designed it, or person who uses it? So these are the things that actually the technicalities that the legal people have to look into. The legal people have to understand. Because once we understand that, it becomes easy for us to say that, okay, we can use this law, maybe we can use a combination of law, maybe one law is sufficient, but we have many of laws in Malaysia, we can use a combination of law to actually prosecute a person. But the main thing, I think the basic thing that worries that we should pay a little bit more attention is about what is the definition of AI offense? How do we categorize it? And that one is not clear yet. I think that is the main concern. Once we have done that, it will be okay.
I think a very important point that Mel brought up was the literacy aspect of things. And while you pointed to one sub-segment of lawyers needing a literacy element, you can take that up with the members of the Bar Council here later. But the wider question of literacy across, that we have platforms like AI Untuk Rakyat, which does have elements of literacy, but clearly this is something that needs attention, both that it cuts across from talent development to enforcement all the way to strategies. So Edwin, what do you think in terms of policy aspects of things? How are we going to address this element of literacy? Of course.
All right. Again, going to the earlier reference, what was the distinction and difference between policy and regulation, right? And I think for us, maybe if we were left to define it, because we're in the same group, right? So for the policy-wise, I think we are more on looking at the macro factors and then making recommendations and guidelines, not so much of actual implementation, but more of recommendations, right? Now, coming back to in terms of the talent development, the skills gap, these are the things that we are looking at. For example, the digital literacy rate, the skills gap. Someone mentioned also the inequitable distribution between different states in Malaysia, right? Obviously, other than perhaps Penang, KL and Johor, some of the other states may not have as good infrastructure or may not have as good access to some of this technology, right? So these are some of the very unique conditions and features that is relevant to Malaysia, right? That's the first thing. The initiatives that you mentioned, AI Untuk Rakyat, and even last Tuesday, just this Tuesday, we had a meeting with the Ministry of Education where they are also looking at a roadmap of putting AI into as core curriculum into schools from 2027 onwards. And when that happens, of course, then not only for the students, but also for all the guru and all the teachers will also need to know about AI, or at least some understanding and awareness and some literacy in terms of AI. Because in the past, and I mean, for myself, I met YB Minister last year as well, and at that point of time, she also mentioned that teachers are not ready and not equipped to be teaching AI in schools. And some of the teachers may even have a fear of the technology because they're not trained in the area, right? They're trained in their core area of specialty, but not in AI, and therefore there's a fear of the unknown again, right? So with all this in place, I guess at the national level now, there seems to be some with the setting up of the NAIO, National AI Office, there seems to be some consolidation in efforts of centralizing these AI initiatives, and of course working with the different industry. I just want to point out that in the working group here, we really have, because we mentioned about diversity just now, right? We really have a lot of diverse talents and subject matter experts, not only from the academia, from the industry, from the Bar Council, from different industries as well. And that's where I think all of these members of the working group, when they put their name forward, when we put our name forward, we probably would have some contact or some experience or some interest in AI already, isn't it? And I think this time round, maybe Prof will concur with me in this, because Prof was also in the previous MOSTI's initiative for the AIGE, right? Together with some of the other members of the working group. And this time around, we see a concerted effort, not only at ministry level, but also at bringing it down to at a consultative level at the industry, right, and the subject matter experts from the different fields, right? And from the NAIO's initiative, we see it filtering to other ministries and other agencies. For example, MOE, just Tuesday, right, where same thing happened. MOE called again the members of the working group to then come in a consultative workshop to put forward our ideas, right? So if this continue going forward, then we will see a lot of consolidation and a lot of, in a sense, unification of some of these proposals, some of these recommendations, some of these policies and guidelines and framework, which would then filter down to actual adoption. And I think this is a really great initiative that's started with NAIO. In the past, we seem to see a lot of different initiatives from a lot of different parties and, all over the place, right? One of the good things from there is that we have lots and lots of reference material in the past, from mostly AIGE, Bar Council had their report, what was the other one, the RFI? The RFI as well. So we had lots and lots of other reference materials from all the other work done in the past to get to this point we are in today. And so I think it's, thanks to NAIO and thanks to the different ministries' initiative, I think is a really good step forward to try to have a concerted and consolidated effort to push the AI agenda forward. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Edwin. And to all the panelists, I think we've hit our mark of time, just on the dot. But with that, I'd like to leave this panel session with a question, not for the panelists, but really for the rest, the members of the working group collectively. What do we want to see out? We started on the 27th of February with the working groups. We have a 3-month sprint. That's a very short time frame. So really, it's the beginning of things. So what do we want to see collectively as working group members in terms of where this output goes and beyond the working group 3-month sprint? Where do we want this to go? What level of engagement that we want to have between the working group members, with governments, with NAIO? It's something to think about, and we will definitely be having further checkpoints after this. There are 2 more to go. And maybe we can flesh out that aspect of it. Where do we want this to go? Okay, so with that, thank you to all the panelists for your time. We'll end this session.
Thank you.